Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Well, here we go. The recording started. Thanks everybody for joining us. Welcome to the Nevada Freight Advisory Committee meeting. It's great to finally have all of you here. It's been over a year since the last Freight Advisory Committee meeting, so I appreciate your patience with me as we have gotten this together over the past few months with all the phone calls and emails trying to coordinate it. A lot of us are new to this committee, and we're excited to meet all of you. I'm also new to NDOT, and I took this position in April. I was previously a FAC stakeholder member like yourselves here in Nevada, but also in Florida. So I understand and appreciate the efforts that you all are taking to come out of your busy schedules to participate in this. Our goal here is to strengthen freight mobility and planning across Nevada. So this is our agenda for today, and we're going to start with some introductions and dive into the Freight Advisory Committee goals. We're going to talk about the charter and membership to make sure everybody's on the same page. And we're going to have an interactive activity to talk about FAC roles and responsibilities so that it's more engaging and collaborative. Then we're going to go over the National Highway Freight Program, the Nevada State Freight Plan, critical freight corridor designations, and the Freight Investment Plan. And then we will talk about the next steps and have some Q&A. So right now, if you could type your name and organization in the chat box, and then you don't have to type this in the chat box, but if you could think about it for our interactive activity, what do you see as Nevada's greatest freight opportunity and the best way for the FAC to get engaged and to inform these activities? So when we have that interactive activity, you can, kind of freestyle your thoughts in there, and Jillian will take that part over. While you're doing that, I'm going to give you a little about my background. As I mentioned, I formerly participated in the Nevada Freight Advisory Committee as a freight stakeholder, but I was also a truck driver for 14 years over the road. And during that period, I formed an organization for women truck drivers. There's a film about our work called Driver that premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in June. I was a grassroots organizer for the Jason's Law Truck Parking Initiative, and I helped the widow of Jason Rivenberg mobilize that movement, and it became part of MAP 21. Our work is cited in the first Jason's Law survey. I went to UNLV and I graduated from the University of Maryland. I studied global business and public policy. And I've done some consulting work on television shows, movies. I speak to university, and I'm on some TRB committees. One of the projects I worked on, a guidebook for local truck parking regulations, will come out in the spring. So all of you on MPOs and stuff, that will maybe come through your way. I will be at the TRB committee annual conference in January. So if any of you are there, I hope you will come to our joint session on truck parking for the Standing Committee on Truck Industry Research. And a little fun fact, I was a consultant on the movie Paradise Highway with Juliette Binoche, and I taught her how to drive. So if you see that on your streaming channels, I'm her stunt driver, and I taught her to drive the tractor trailer. So this is our Nevada freight system, and it plays a vital role in supporting our economy and connecting us to the regional and national markets. But there's some key things we wanted to have you consider that in 2022, Nevada's freight system moved 150 million tons of goods valued at $164 billion. Combination trucks account for 22% of travel on Nevada's interstate highways and 26% on rural interstate highways. This ranks Nevada 10th nationally in truck share. By 2015, freight moved by truck in Nevada is projected to grow 55% by weight and 97% by value. So this is going to make Nevada one of the fastest growing states for freight movement. Tragically, an average of 39 lives are lost annually in crashes involving large trucks, highlighting the need for continued safety improvements. Nevada has historically been a pass-through state, but in the last few years, it has been more of an origin and destination state. So this is going to change the role of Nevada as we grow with manufacturing and warehousing distribution centers that are driven by strategic investments in our infrastructure and the proximity of our state to the major markets in the West. We are the connection point to the West Coast ports and the inland markets. And so California and the Southwest, it puts Nevada as a critical player in the national and also international supply chain. So as members of the Freight Advisory Committee, you all are going to be playing a critical role in shaping Nevada's freight future. This group has a unique opportunity to advise us here at the state on freight-related priorities, challenges and projects, and funding needs. So the FAC serves as a forum for meaningful discussions, and that informs state transportation decisions that affect the freight mobility. It helps us coordinate regional priorities, ensuring alignment across organizations and jurisdictions, and promotes collaboration, fostering exchange of ideas between the private and public sectors on freight issues. It also contributes the development of Nevada's freight plan, including providing input on critical freight designations and the freight investment plan. So your collective expertise and insights are vital when making sure our freight system remains safe and efficient and is a driving force for Nevada's economy. So the work that we do here with the Freight Advisory Committee relies on efficient coordination to address Nevada's freight needs effectively. And we need to monitor the state's freight activity clusters and focus on the urbanized areas. We need to work closely with the MPOs and the other key organizations. So to ensure efficient representation from local jurisdictions, the Nevada Association of Counties and the Nevada League of Cities, their representatives are present here to emphasize the meeting's efficiency. These FAC meetings are going to be held as needed to align with major milestones like updates to the state freight plan every 4 years. And this approach will help keep our work focused and more impactful. Initially, the FAC was formed in 2016 as a chartered advisory body representing a diverse group of public and private sector stakeholders. The FAC operates under a charter that defines its structure and responsibilities. And this provides advice on freight-related priorities and needs. It offers guidance to NDOT on pressing issues and opportunities. This updated FAC membership was designed to align with the requirements of the bipartisan infrastructure law. As we consider the roles and responsibility of the FAC, let's identify approaches to improve its effectiveness. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jillian, who she's going to guide us through the interactive activity.
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I am going to drop a QR code as well as a link into the chat. Feel free to use either of those I'm also going to share my screen in a moment here once I do that. And there you can also go to menti.com if you're joining from your computer and enter the code that is shown on the screen. Give me just 1 second while I get this pulled up. Okay. Are you guys seeing the first question that we have?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So as folks start to join in, the questions are open-ended. We have 3 questions for you all. It is an anonymous process, but your question will show up on the screen. So please keep it professional. And as the responses start to show up, we'll open the floor to Desiree, Bardia, Amir, Murph, anybody that wants to ask for any more details or anything that pops up, or any of the folks that put something up there. If you would like to add to it or elaborate, feel free to jump in. This is sort of an open discussion forum. So and if anyone has any issues joining, please speak up. Seeing responses roll in. Looks like we only have a few folks on there. Is anybody having issues accessing it, or is everybody?
Looks fine from my end, Jill.
Okay. We'll give it just another minute here. Anything anybody wants to add, or any questions from the NDOT or parametric side on any of the items we're seeing? Obviously, participation is a main theme. We'll give it another minute or so before we jump to the next one. All right, I'm going to jump forward. If anybody still wants to answer that first question, you should have the ability to navigate back on your end. All right, so what strategies could enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the FAC?
And I want to say for the recording that if you're not on the live and we're sharing this with you after, you're welcome to email me. And our email, mine and Murph's, is at the end of this presentation if you want to provide us input on these questions from the Menti poll.
Yes, I believe the QR code as well as the link and the website with the code at the top of the screen, I believe they only stay active for about 48 hours. So if anybody wants to access it after that, we may have to get them another code, but there's no issue doing that.
Okay.
I'm not seeing any responses come. Oh, now I am.
It takes a minute to write, to think and then write. Mm-hmm.
Just was making sure you guys were seeing what I was seeing. Sometimes.
So, and while people are responding, I wanted to say that, we had you write your introductions in the chat, but the downside of that is that the AI note taker did not recognize that. However, the slide that we had on the screen prior to this mentee session lists all of the different organizations. So if you wanted to collaborate, as I'm seeing on the screen from this question, that helps us connect you if you wanted to have an offline meeting at some point.
For just another minute and then we'll move on to the next one, but we're seeing clearly defined goals, measurable performance metrics, cooperation, collaboration, detailed agendas. NDOT's take an active role and engage with MPOs and locals. All makes sense. And jump to the next one. How can we ensure that FAC represents the needs of all freight stakeholders across the state? Seeing a couple more themes: outreach, engagement, being responsive, requesting feedback. Taking an active role. Yes.
These are really good responses. I like them.
Yes, they are all great. All right, I think that's about all the requests that we've had to the other questions, so I can hand it back to Desiree now.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go back and share my screen again, and we can resume this presentation. Okay, can you see my presentation again over there?
Yes,
Okay, so I've changed the screen again, and I have okay. So we went over the interactive. I think it's not advancing now. There we go. All right. You've got the next slide up there. Okay, so we are going to take those responses into put them all together, and so that we can get some more feedback from you and define it better. So I just want you to know that we're going to look at all of that and give people that didn't come the time to give their input as well. So I want to shift now our focus to some key freight planning activities that we aim to accomplish, and these include the strategic freight planning, developing the strong partnerships, and advancing project development, and of course, ensuring federal compliance. One critical aspect of our freight planning is the National Highway Freight Program, which is part of the bipartisan infrastructure law. So the NHFP aims to improve the efficient movement of freight on the National Highway Freight Network. And for Nevada, this means that approximately 14 million per year in funding is what we have. And to be eligible for that funding, there are several important requirements. First, Nevada must develop and update its state freight plan, outline goals, strategies, and performance measures for freight improvement. And we also need to identify and maintain the National Highway Freight Network within our state boundaries, and that includes critical urban and rural freight corridors. Another requirement is the development of the Freight Investment Plan, which we're going to go over in a moment. That's a fiscally constrained document, and it details the projects and the funding needed to enhance Nevada's freight network. And last but not least, engaging with all of you on the FAC, that is an essential part of all of this. So a few of NDOT's freight planning documents do go through the Federal Highway review and approval process, and they are the Nevada Freight Plan, the critical urban and rural freight corridor designations, and the Freight Investment Plan. The freight plan must be updated every 4 years, and it was most recently updated and approved by FHWA in 2022. The update was incorporated in with all the new requirements that were included in the bipartisan infrastructure law, and the next update is due July 2026. We are going to start working on that in the new year to have it ready by its deadline. The National Highway Freight Program funds can only be spent on facilities that are identified on the National Freight Network. The National Highway Freight Network includes primary highway freight system, other interstate portions not on the primary highway freight system, and critical urban and critical rural freight corridors. That makes me tongue-tied every time. So this is a map of these corridors in Nevada, and there's a limit on the number of miles that can be included in the network. So that's why the road's not connected yet. NDOT used a data-driven and performance-based approach to designate these corridors in 2023. And this analysis included GPS data that NDOT purchased and the highway performance monitoring system truck counts. NDOT worked closely with all of the MPOs in Nevada as these were designated in 2023. So this is the list. The full extent of I-15 and I-80 in Nevada are included in the primary highway freight system. There are some segments of I-11 and I-580 that were either constructed or designated as interstates after the previous designation was made, and they are now shown as interstates not on the primary highway freight system. We have the full list available if you want to review it, and it's also posted on the NDOT website. These are the list of critical rural and critical urban freight corridors, and they were approved by FHWA last year. These corridors were developed based on the data-driven process and multiple rounds of coordination and communication with MPOs and the Freight Advisory Committee. The NHFP funds can be utilized. These funds can be allocated to projects that are included in the freight investment plan. So it's important to note that for a project to be eligible for the funding, it must meet two key criteria. And that is that the project should be an eligible activity or project under the bipartisan infrastructure law. This includes projects aimed at improving freight movement, enhancing safety, or addressing congestion. It includes truck parking and other activities. The project must also be located on the National Highway Freight Network, which includes the critical freight corridors across Nevada and the nation. So as we're thinking about potential projects, we need to ensure that they align with these two criteria to be eligible for the NHFP funding. This was updated in 2022 as part of the Nevada Freight Plan, and another update is currently underway. So these are the planned projects in our freight investment plan for future fiscal year 2027 and beyond. The projects highlighted in blue are the ones planned for 2027 through 2029, and the projects highlighted in orange are the ones planned for 2030 or beyond. So it's a long time frame. These projects are focused on providing additional truck parking spaces. Truck parking projects are critical for enhancing highway safety, supporting freight efficiency, and ensuring compliance with federal regulations such as Jason's Law. Jason's Law highlights the urgent need for safe and accessible parking for truck drivers to rest and comply with hours of service regulations. Adequate truck parking reduces driver fatigue, and that is a major contributor to crashes and prevents illegal parking on road shoulders or ramps, which can endanger all road users. So projects like these play a pivotal role in strengthening the nation's supply chain by providing reliable facilities for truck drivers who are the backbone of a resilient supply chain. Truck climbing lane projects that were identified in the NDOT passing and climbing lane study a year ago are also a critical safety improvement. And then we have this TPAS, Truck Parking Availability System project. It's planned for 11 locations along I-15 and I-80, and it's going to be providing truck drivers with information on how many truck parking spaces are coming up through signage on the interstate, and that also collects data. This is the list of the projects that were in the graphic we just saw. The first 2 years of the freight investment plan reflects the conversion of 6 projects that the department previously delivered using 2025 and 2026 National Highway Freight Program funds. These funds were advanced to construction in prior years to fully obligate the project. In 2027, this conversion will be complete, and the remaining National Highway Freight Program funds will be allocated to planned freight projects. As you can see, for future projects, there is a STIP ID assigned to each project, and that means these projects have gone through the One Nevada process. And don't worry if you can't see everything that is the details in this slide, because we're going to be sending you this presentation afterwards so that you can review it. So we mentioned the One Nevada process in the last slide, and it's critical to note that all of the freight needs, concepts, and projects must go through this One Nevada prioritization process. It is a multi-step approach that ensures only the most impactful and feasible projects make it into the freight investment plan. So this is a graphic of the process that begins with a needs assessment and validation to identify the most critical freight issues. And then the next step is concept definition and packaging, where project ideas are refined and organized. The concepts are then prioritized based on their urgency, impact, and feasibility. And then they go through the financial screening and scoping that's conducted. And finally, the projects are scheduled and programmed. So here's a few other notes. A 5% match is required for projects included in the freight investment plan. It's a cost sharing requirement in addition to the National Highway Freight program. And it's also important to note that NHFP is just one of several federal funding mechanisms available for freight projects. So we will be exploring various options to maximize our resources. So the freight investment plan is something that's going to be really your first task to review this after you get this after this meeting. And we appreciate if you could provide feedback on the list by December 31st, 2024, so that we can then submit the updated freight investment plan to Federal Highway for approval. NDOT has undertaken other freight initiatives in recent years. The truck parking implementation plan addresses major parking challenges in the state, and this is a critical issue for us. Other NDOT studies are the hazardous commodity flow study and the Nevada State Rail Plan. NDOT also coordinated with the MPOs in their regional freight planning efforts. Many of these studies are on the NDOT website. I did update our pages. We have 4 pages dedicated to freight, and if you want to look at some of these studies, they are on there. So here's some next steps. We're going to be collecting your feedback on the freight investment plan by the end of the year. We're going to submit that updated freight investment plan to Federal Highway for approval and keep the process moving forward. And then in addition, we will initiate the process for the next Nevada Freight Plan update with the goal of completing it by July 2026. And that update will include another updated list of critical rural and critical urban freight corridors, as well as a revised freight investment plan. Additionally, we're going to integrate the feedback from this meeting that you provided, especially regarding the roles and responsibilities for future FAC meetings, so that we can enhance the effectiveness of our continued collaboration. This is my contact information, and then Murph, who's also here, who I report to, are linked to our freight planning section. And so we are happy to hear any questions or feedback that you have now with our remaining time. Thank you.
Hi, Desiree. This is Vanessa from RTC Washoe.
Yes.
Thank you for this presentation. I'm new on this committee, so helpful to get that overview. You mentioned feedback desired by December 31st. Do we have this already? Has this been sent, or do we need to look out for this?
Yes, after this meeting, we will be sending it to you so that you can look at it between now and then.
Okay, perfect.
And if you have any questions, feel free to contact me because I know this is a lot.
Great. And are you the contact for that feedback, or is Murph, or both?
I would CC both of us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Jake Walklaw, Federal Highway Administration. I just want to echo, I appreciate your giving us a pretty good overview of the program. A number of us are relatively new to this particular program. So talking about all the requirements to move forward and the deadlines. So yeah, I look forward to being a part of this team, and I know my team members have been a part of this in the beginning since 2019, but we've had some change and turnover since then. So, like always, constantly re-educating new people coming in and keep on advancing the program. So, thank you so much, Desiree.
Thank you. Yeah, I know a lot of us are new, so I like welcome anybody asking questions and struggling because I have too, because I've come from being boots on the ground to like a lot of reading and structure. And it's a lot of new stuff, and I'm with you, and we're all in this together. Anyone else want to have any questions, comments, or want to, give a shameless plug for themselves? I'm all ears.
Hi, Desiree. My name is Casey Sylvester with Carson City Public Works. I just wanted to ask a little bit, if we, as separate agencies, are working on our projects, if we want to have coordination with the freight industry, is that something that we can coordinate with you? It sounds like you've been involved with different organizations inside the freight industry before. If we have questions, or maybe we want to put out a survey or something to that effect, are you somebody we can work with for that?
Yes, and Paul Enos is on from the Nevada Trucking Association, but actually I have two organizations of truck drivers who are all very, very diverse truck drivers. So I actually get called from Federal Highway, and every single state in the nation regularly to please share their surveys, and we get a lot of them. So I have a huge social media network. And if you will email them to me, I will put them out and I will ask drivers to do them because I know it's really important to get diverse driver feedback.
Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, we have a study going on US 50, which is not one of the freight corridors identified, but there are freight that use that corridor. And we have not developed said survey yet. We're kind of still exploring how we could go about that, but it sounds like you can help us solve a big piece of that puzzle, getting the survey out, getting responses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I've actually been playing around with the INRIX data, the freight data, and can make a visual graphic of freight moving in our state, and I see that it is in a lot of different places that we don't necessarily have designated right now. And I know as a driver, I've driven on them. So yes, I'm happy to help any way that I can.
Okay, I'll reach out to you and Paul via email once we have a little bit more of our side figured out. But I'm glad to know we can reach out to you. But on that topic of the freight corridors, you said that there's limited miles on how many miles of freight corridor can be designated. I just wonder if there's any sort of a likelihood in the future of them expanding those miles based upon the size of certain states, like Nevada, which is a fairly large state, or if that's something that's probably going to stay static.
Yes, and I'm going to let either Amir or Bardia speak on that because that was like kind of one of my questions. I do know that we submitted a request for information comment for the new designations, and we were supposed to get back from Federal Highway something for our FAC for all of you to look at to see if you agreed with how they were going to redesignate. But I'm going to let Amir talk more about that.
Yeah, I think that was for the National Multimodal Freight Network. Then the National Highway Freight Network is already, the mileage is already increased actually after the bipartisan infrastructure law. There were like 75 miles of urban critical freight corridors and 150. So they increased the mileages for critical urban freight corridors to 150. And for rural corridors, they increased it to 600 miles throughout the state. And this is based on the mileages of the primary highway freight system and the size of the state. So it's already increased based on the bipartisan infrastructure law. We're going to monitor how it goes, but we are not expecting, like at least in the near future, any changes in these mileage designations.
Okay, thanks for the explanation, Amir. I appreciate it. Thanks, Desiree.
Yes. Anyone else want to jump in there? Michael Shabana, are you on or are you just listening in? I know you had a training today. Do you want to tell a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, sure thing. So I represent IRG. We're the developers and operators of the Port of Nevada. It's a intermodal and manifest rail terminal in the Fernley area. So I'm just looking to see how we can serve Northern Nevada. We're also developing a property in the Northern Las Vegas area. I expect to bring that online here in the next couple of years. Really interested to see how rail, shipments via rail can kind of offset some of these initiatives where some of those costs are towards highway improvement, or we can maybe incentivize some of the rail service and kind of ease the burden that you see on the highways. So I'm here if anybody has any questions or comments and wants to reach out. My contact's in the chat there. So I would be interested in any discussions you guys might have. And Desiree, thank you for leading this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I would like to ask a couple questions of the people that we have somebody from Nellis. How does freight affect the base? And we have a couple people from the airports that have freight cargo. Do you want to say a couple words about freight?
Hi, Desiree. This is JJ from Nellis Air Force Base. Kind of like a couple of you guys, I'm also pretty new, trying to figure out how we can work together to make sure that our airmen are getting to and from the installation in a timely manner. I know the I-15 and 215 and the I-11 in northern Las Vegas is always a limiting factor for our airmen to get from their houses to their workplace. So that's kind of why I'm involved. And also our Nevada Test and Training Range has over 10,000 square miles of restricted airspace. So we're also really interested in where the truck parking will be, just due to surveillance opportunities and just making sure that we're keeping our service members' best interest at hand.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Anyone else from the airport? I think we have Reno, and we have, go ahead.
Hi, this is Lissa Butterfield from the Reno Tahoe Airport Authority. And, I know there's a lot of really experienced people here on this call. But, just simplistically, cargo only goes on planes when there's no other option for them because it's so expensive, right? So it's got to be extremely time sensitive or perishable, or it has to go by plane. So our goal with freight is always to see what we can do to connect with the road system or the rail system to make sure that cargo gets off planes as quickly as possible and into the form of transportation that the freight carriers prefer to use. So connectivity between the airport and rail lines and road and freeway is key concerns for us.
Thank you.
Desiree, did you want to touch on freight rail a little bit for folks that are on the call, roles and responsibilities of NevadaDOT when it comes to freight rail?
Is anybody here from GOAD? Nathan, is it? I think we had a couple people we have been meeting with on that. I don't have my freight rail up on here. I mean, freight rail for the state is not like something that we do in the same way as pavement. However, we can, like we can't fund projects. That's not part of the way that we're set up to do that. However, connecting people there's a lot of talk about freight rail, what Michael is doing with the Port of Nevada. And I know we talked a little bit about his background with the Port of Long Beach and all of that, but there are some warehousing facilities that are putting in rail spurs. They're not really utilizing them right now. And I know that GOAD's office was very interested in knowing how we are going to be working with freight rail in the state. Idaho is having some meetings on how they're going to be working with it on the state. So I'm like open to having a collaborative meeting with the knowledge of that's not really like our thing, that's, like connecting the dots with people and finding ways around things is kind of the best that I can do. Nathan, do you want to?
Sure. This is Nathan Goldberg with the RTC Southern Nevada. I think from our perspective, we're always looking at the safety of rail crossings and that interaction, as well as kind of I know in Henderson it only happens once a week, but right there's there's the rail that goes on the spur, and that can delay traffic on certain roads that have the crossing for a significant period, and people start to make bad decisions when that happens in terms of U-turning where they're not supposed to, and kind of getting angry and driving in ways that they shouldn't. So I think when we're interacting with the rail, that tends to be what we think of rather than the actual movement of the goods itself.
And Nathan, you're spot on. In terms of Nevada DOT, historically by constitution, they can do planning, feasibility studies. They could actually support funding and grants, help secure federal and state funding for rail projects, but they don't deliver, freight rail or passenger rail for that matter. They typically just coordinate with other agencies, including, of course, the MPOs, RTC South and RTC North, and with the FRA on private entities. So in past, their involvement has been limited, unlike, highways, roads, and bridges. Their involvement has been limited to just planning and feasibility studies. So just wanted to make sure everybody, because this question comes up a lot, how come NDOT doesn't deliver XYZ rail?
And I'll say too, in our updated regional transportation plan that we're working on, a couple of the projects, which they're longer term, they're in the out years, right? I know in like the map you showed, there's projects that are in 2030 and beyond, and this is kind of the same thing, but some of the railroad bridges that go over the top of our roadways in and around downtown Las Vegas are very old, kind of don't meet current standards and are in need of replacement. So those are things that we're going to have to be thinking about in whether it's the next 5, 10, 20 years or whatever. Those are all going to have to be dealt with.
One of the major ones
Those
is
are on the
Charleston and UP, right? Right there in downtown.
I feel bad because we were supposed to have somebody from Union Pacific here, and she emailed right before the meeting and said something happened and she couldn't come. And I was like, oh, darn it. So, but she'll
Desiree,
get this. Go ahead.
I'm just happy that it's a consideration, right? I mean, it's something when I saw that statistic that you're looking at 55% growth, right? It's going to be difficult to develop the infrastructure to accommodate that sort of growth. And it's going to be a challenge you're going to be facing at some point in the future, right? We all are. When you look at rail and the amount of, trucks that it can take off the road, minus some of the nuances, not just discounting any of that and the local dry component, I think it could be, I think it could be effective and a worthwhile cause to potentially go down that road to see if we can change how DOT is looking at it and their involvement in it directly.
I do know that we want to hire somebody that's dedicated as a rail position, and that's supposed to, get some more attention, especially because of the Bright Line happening. There's just a lot of talk about the rail, so it's a work in progress, and any kind of, I know you have a lot of experience with it, and this state, we don't, because that's not really been our thing, but it's starting to get a lot more conversation and discussion happening around here. So,
definitely happy to help in any way I can.
Okay, awesome. Good to know. Thank you. Anybody else want to bring up anything that they're curious about or want to comment on? No? Okay. Well, what do you think, Amir and Bardia?
I think mission accomplished.
Okay. Well, this was,
Yeah, I was gonna say, this meeting is more reporting out, but I think in the follow-on meetings, there's gonna be a lot more interactions and a lot more engagement with folks on the call. But this one was basically briefing on all the things that have happened since the last year that we got together. So promise it will be less talking and more listening.
so we'll send out this recording and the slides, and then we'll be looking for your feedback on the freight investment plan, and we will compile the feedback from the interactive and gather from the people that didn't get to attend. And we'll follow up. I mean, don't expect another meeting for at least a few, get through a quarter, but they will be as needed. And please feel free, do not hesitate to contact me if you have follow-up questions related to the presentation or anything that we talked about. Or another topic that you want to have like a little side meeting on, such as if I could help facilitate a conversation about the rail with maybe Peggy from Union Pacific and Michael and the other people that are interested in how we're going to work with this rail question. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
everyone.
much.
Happy
Thank
holidays,
you.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.